Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mindfully Aligned. This episode kicks off the new season. I feel like a lot of people believe that after Labor Day, it's suddenly fall. I don't agree with that, but I will say this is the beginning of September, first episode of September, and we're kind of easing into the colder months, which are my favorite. And one thing I love about the colder months is that it really gives us a chance to slow down and be with ourselves. There isn't that craziness of life going on like there is in summer. I feel like it's so nice when life is just slower and we can really check in with ourselves. That's why I love the colder months. And I know that I'm a minority when it comes to that opinion, because I believe and I know that a lot of people are uncomfortable when it comes to being alone, especially for longer periods of time. I personally feel like there is so much beauty in being alone, so much power in learning to enjoy your own company. And so as these winter months kind of come in and we're going to have to be doing a lot more of that, I figured that this is the perfect theme for today's episode. So let's get into it. We live in a dopamine-driven world. So from the moment we wake up, we open our phones, hop on Instagram, hop on Twitter, talk to people, communicate, see what other people are thinking about something, and we have become addicted to that. Because of that, we are so used to drowning out our own thoughts that we forget how to sometimes just sit with ourselves quietly. So if you have difficulty with being alone, listen, I don't blame you, because that is kind of how our society is set up. From the moment we wake up, we have stimulation thrown at us every which way. So of course, it feels unnatural to be alone. But with practice, that can be amended, and I want to share with you why that is so important. So like I said, that dopamine, that easy, accessible dopamine is important to note because it gives us quick little bursts of happiness, quick little bursts of feeling like we actually did something. And when we become so used to those quick, fleeting moments of happiness, our brains kind of have a hard time adjusting and regulating when we are only feeding it that. It's like junk food. When you feed your brain quick, easy hits of dopamine all the time, it's not running at peak capacity. The same way, if you are feeding your body junk food all the time, your body's not going to be running at peak capacity. So even outside of the digital world, sometimes this can look like how we hang out with our friends and we come back and we feel lonely or so invested in a Netflix show. Like I was just watching Love Island, I know the rest of the country was. And then when it's over, we're kind of left with that what now feeling. And that's because when you fill your brain with the easier dopamine or the temporary happiness, when that's all gone, there's nothing left unless we find true happiness within. And that's why it's super important to sit with ourselves and become comfortable with being alone and finding happiness and joy in that, because when the temporary happiness leaves, you can still be left feeling good about yourself. It's important to know that our presence can be enough. As I was thinking about this stuff, I was doing research and I found this quote by Pascal, this French philosopher, that says, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit in a quiet room alone." And I think that's so true. We have a lot of things that we go through in life along the way. There are certain things that we can process in the moment, easier things. There are certain things that we put off for a while as well. A lot of times it's because we frankly don't have the time to process what we've been through. And as time goes on, these things pile up, and we have a burden or a baggage that we're carrying with us. And those become the scary thoughts that we run from because they go unchecked for so long. And then it just gets built upon over the years. And frankly, I don't want to be someone who is carrying baggage with me to the grave. And I think that that's part of the reason why people find solitude to be so scary sometimes or lonely, is because you are forced to kind of think about things you don't want to think about. And then when we're alone, we instantly just grab our phones. If we're online for food, if we are online at checkout, if we're waiting for anything, the first thing we do is pick up our phone because it's so uncomfortable to just sit with our thoughts for 2 seconds. That's the problem. Instead, take alone time as an opportunity to get to know yourself better. It's about reframing it. Instead of jumping to fill that time like we're kind of programmed to do, it's important that we make it a priority to just kind of sit. It could even be for 5-10 minutes, but you'd be surprised what that can do for your mind. There is so much clutter that is just built up over the years, and if we don't check in with ourselves, we're just gonna have a mind full of junk. I know me personally, I love having some time to myself. Listen, I know I'm an Aquarius, but that's just what I need to feel good, especially if I'm in a state of high stress or high anxiety. Definitely then I'm extra careful about making time to just have my thoughts. It honestly feels like a must for me at a certain point. Like if I have a lot on my plate and I go for a run, I'm probably not going to even have music. Or if I have a long walk, I'm not putting on a podcast because I'm like, okay, this time I don't even want to hear any extra thoughts coming into my brain. I just need to hear what is my brain saying? What am I actually feeling right now? What's going on? Because we spend so much time at work having other thoughts, trying to keep those personal ruminating thoughts from arising. You know, when we're trying to go to sleep, we're trying to silence those thoughts so we can get a good night's sleep. But we need to actually schedule out that time to let it come out. And I promise you, when I have those runs that it's just me and my thoughts, or those long walks where it's just me and my thoughts, I come out the other end so much more clear-headed. And I know it sounds strange, like to walk with no music, but I feel like a lot of times in society, what we view as strange is actually really good for you. Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's better for you. Just because it's strange or weird doesn't mean it's not good for you. So yeah, maybe going for a long walk without music or going for a run silently might be like crazy, but it's really not. It's just something that you can do to easily check in with yourself and just recalibrate. And my main thought with myself when I'm trying to figure out, like, do I even want to listen to music right now? I always think, I don't want to hear any other person's thoughts or words right now. I need to just hear my own thoughts. I need to. And that's the thing about the constant stimulation that we give ourselves from the moment we wake up to the moment we fall asleep, is that we are constantly consuming other people's thoughts. We are constantly hearing another person's think piece on Instagram, hearing our friends' thoughts, talking to our boss, hearing their thoughts. It's never about what we think. And it's also super important that we give ourselves time to formulate our own thoughts, because when you do this, it lets you figure out what your own beliefs are without anyone telling you what to think, how you should think, what your take on this should be. And it helps you figure out how you actually see the world and, you know, what your perspective is. You have to establish that. So many philosophers throughout the ages have discussed or, published their thoughts on how being alone is so important. And one of the biggest factors is independence and independence of thought. We don't realize that by doom scrolling, constantly consulting our friends, we are kind of robbing ourselves of that ability to think freely and formulate our own thoughts based on our own experiences. Yes, of course, it's good to lean on other people and check in with other people, but you can't do any of that until you establish who you are. By feeding ourselves from outside sources perpetually, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to just think. And the same goes for creativity too. I know when we were younger, we were so much more imaginative and creative, and we could just come up with any kind of idea. And now we're in the real world, and we've figured out that we lost that somewhere along the way. But we need that to perform at work or to just do anything in this world. All of a sudden, we're like, wait, where did my creativity go? And we think that it's just a part of becoming an adult, when really it's because we got addicted to the dopamine. We got so used to never having a thought of our own that we lost the opportunity to even formulate a creative thought. And for me personally, that is a big way of how I keep myself creative. And you may not even notice, but that's how it works for you too. Even if you don't think that you are intentionally giving yourself alone time, have you ever just gone for a walk or taken a shower and like it just hits you, the answer hits you, or you just come up with this great idea for something? That's exactly why. It's because For 10 minutes, we were able to actually process something without anyone else weighing in, without anyone else's opinions or comparisons coming in, and we were able to just come up with it on our own. What if we just gave ourselves more of that? You know, good ideas don't just have to come in the shower. It can be throughout the day. We just have to give ourselves the room to think, the room to breathe. Aside from just creativity, being alone can really improve our relationship with ourselves and others, surprisingly, because when you actually fall in love with yourself, you are then able to interact with others so much better. Your relationships become much stronger because you are happy with yourself. Have you ever noticed that when you are in a perpetual state of anxiety, it feels like you're so much more distant from the rest of the world? And that's because it often just spirals out of our own grasp. And we can prevent that by just checking in with ourselves. You know, taking that intentional time alone helps us show up better for other people, because then when you do connect, when you do link up, it's such a more positive experience. I know for me, I like to be really strict about this because I feel like if I'm in my zone, if I am just in a place where I know I need to be alone and I hang out with other people, I'm not going to be the most fun person to be around, you know? So I'm not afraid to say I need to hang back because I kind of just need to do my own thing right now. That's completely okay. And intentionally choosing to be alone, there's so much power in that, because you're not acting from a place of desperation. Oh my God, I have to hang out with them or they're not gonna be my friends. Oh my God, I have to. No, it's about prioritizing yourself first and making sure you're good before you can show up for other people. Again, you can't pour from an empty cup. You know, that baggage I mentioned earlier, sometimes that can implicate our friendships, our romantic relationships, just any relationship that we have that is close and important to us. If we have unresolved stuff that we're dealing with, of course it's going to affect or start to rub off on the people closest to us as well. So we kind of have to keep ourselves in check for the good of those relationships too. And of course, by no longer being desperate to fill our time, it allows us to be more selective with who we spend our time with or how we're spending our time. You know, when you're not scared of your own shadow or scared of yourself or being with yourself and your own thoughts, you don't feel like you have to hang out with people who you know aren't really good for you just because it's better than being alone. You never want to choose things like that just out of fear of no one but yourself, because that's when you can kind of start to get into the era of stagnation or just not doing well for yourself and feeling stuck because you are doing anything else under the sun but sitting with yourself and checking in with yourself. You know, we can run into a lot of hard things that way, and it winds up being the longer road. And down the line, we realize that whatever we just went through would have been so much easier if we just sat with ourselves and gave ourselves a moment to process instead of forcing it, pushing it down, and then it comes up when it's the least convenient. Everything blows up in your face. Of course, we want to avoid that. And that's why we have to choose the time, make the time, intentionally put aside the time to process and check in. Obviously, now you know, yeah, it is important to be alone, but it doesn't need to be lonely. It can actually be quite fun. Take it from me, I love it. One thing I like to do is what I call Dawn's Days. You can have them be whatever you want, but basically it's just a day. You know, you could do this every month, every other month, but set aside a day where you take yourself on a date. You get dressed up like you are actually going on a date or hang out with your friends doing something cute. You know, you pick out a place that you've always wanted to go to, or an activity you always wanted to do, or just something that interests you, and you go out and enjoy it with no one but yourself. Making this a part of your routine, a part of something you do quarterly, every other month, whenever, is super impactful, not only for our brains and learning how to be alone, but also for your self-esteem, because subconsciously it's teaching you that you don't need to rely on other people to experience good things. If there's a movie you want to see or a concert you want to go to, a lot of times people who aren't comfortable with themselves would just not get to do that thing if no one's available. But why rob yourself of that experience? Why deprive yourself of that experience just because no one's available? When you no longer make enjoying life contingent on whether or not people are around to do it with you, then you are truly living life in full color. One of my friends, shout out to Allie, a great friend of the pod, she is currently on a 2-week trip to Japan and is by herself. This is the trip that she has always wanted to go on, and I love seeing her just be able to go on this trip. You know, traveling alone, doing whatever you want to alone is so important because you're no longer just waiting on people to like that thing as much as you. You're unique. Not everyone's gonna like it as much as you. Me personally, I love Princess Diana. So I remember when the Princess Diana movie came out with Kristen Stewart, I had to see it. But, you know, I knew I like Princess Diana as much as I do. So I just went by myself. And honestly, it was a great experience. I love doing these Dawn's dates. I highly recommend you do them too. Just no longer depriving yourself of good experiences. Being alone doesn't have to be miserable. It can be fun. Do what you love. You're still you. You can enjoy those things with just you. So yeah, all in all, it is super important that we prioritize spending time for ourselves because it rewires our brain to no longer be reliant on those cheap hits of dopamine or those easy, accessible, temporary versions of happiness, and forces us to really just check in with ourselves and find happiness within ourselves. You know, it gives us time to think about that baggage and process that baggage that we've accumulated throughout life, and allows us to really take a load off, get back in good graces with ourselves, and also help strengthen our relationships with others because we're no longer carrying that weight around. So yeah, it's important to do that and give yourself a chance for free thought. I hope you are able to give yourself just 10 minutes of you time and maybe even take yourself on a date. So that pretty much is the big idea of the episode. And now it's time for the song of the week. So this week's song of the week is Me, Myself, and I by Beyonce. Again, you know, like I said last episode, I love Beyonce. But this song, I mean, it's obvious. The reason is in the title. It's all about you, knowing that you are all you've got in the end. So it's important that we give ourselves a chance to strengthen the most important relationship that we have, the one with ourselves. If we don't have that, we don't have anything. If we skip out on cultivating a healthy relationship with ourselves, we are missing out on the full potential of life. I think this song is an amazing reminder of that. Through hardships, you always have to have yourself. So yeah, that is the song of the week. Again, it is Me, Myself, and I by Beyonce. And that, my friends, closes out this week's episode. I do want to say I have an exciting little announcement for next episode. We are doing our first little book-based episode. So it's called Radical Self-Acceptance by Tara Brach. You know, in this episode, we were talking about how it's important to cultivate a relationship with self, and by sitting down with yourself, you can figure out what baggage you're carrying. This is now going to be how to heal that baggage, how to stop being so critical about ourselves, and how to stop judging ourselves. So get excited. I can't wait to talk about that with you all. I know it's something that we all deal with. So yeah, be sure to tune in 2 Mondays. Thank you guys again so much for listening. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend, and let me know what your thoughts are on the Mindfully Aligned podcast Instagram page. See ya!